All right, today I want to talk about when your value system fails, but it still matters to you. Um, and I want you to imagine this. I want you to imagine that you've built your personal value system, whether you have or whether you haven't, and that you've made hard choices in building this value system. You've named certain trade-offs that you want to make. You've clarified what matters to you under pressure. Because remember, a value system is just it's just the trade-offs you are willing to make under constraint conditions. So, what else have you done? You've turned kind of vague aspirations and ethical goals into behavior guiding structure. You've done the work. You've built a value system, and then something happens. You violate one of those values. You say that you'll be direct because you value being direct in your communication, but you withhold and you back off out of fear. You say that you'll enforce a boundary, but you don't. You say that you'll protect clarity over momentum, but you move too fast and things fall apart. You don't forget your values. You just didn't follow them. And what you're left with is not just guilt or disappointment, but uncertainty about your whole value system itself. Like, if the values were real, then why didn't you live by them? Like, if they were structurally integrated into your life, then wouldn't they have held up under pressure? And why didn't they? This is where most value systems lose their usefulness. Not in the moment of failure per se, but in how that failure is interpreted. So here's the hidden contradiction in most personal value systems: that most people, even with good structural definitions of their personal values, still carry a moral assumption, which is that once the system is articulated, that following it is just a matter of discipline. So when a failure occurs, they make one of two moves. Number one, self-invalidation. Maybe I don't really believe what I said I did. Number two, system disqualification. Maybe this system was too rigid and too idealized and too abstract. The assumption underneath both is that real values are always followed. And that misalignment is a sign of either internal dishonesty or bad design. But this is exactly the assumption that turns values from a constraint system into a purity test, which is not helpful at all. So I want to dig into some historical philosophical sources to help us better conceive what a personal value system is in order to enable us to process and metabolize failure of that personal value system when, not if, it happens. So, starting with Immanuel Kant, in Religion Within the Bounds of Bare Reason, Kant argued that moral effort is an infinite task. What does he mean by this? Kant means that the idea isn't that we will ever fully embody the moral law without deviation. That is not the point, but that we continue to orient it through acts of deliberate reaffirmation. So Kant makes a distinction here that's really useful between fallibility, which is moral error that still honors the system, and corruption, which is where we justify error by redefining the standard, right? So fallibility is moral error that honors the system. Corruption is justifying error by redefining the standard. And the key question is not so much, did I break the rule? The key question is, did I preserve the rule's authority in how I handled that break? If you violate a value, but you still treat that value as valid, and you still understand the failure as a deviation, then you haven't undermined the system. You've just confirmed that it governs. The value actually held up. It was you that did not hold up. So that difference matters. And so now we can move on from Immanuel Kant to William James. So William James, in The Moral Philosopher and the Moral Life, reframes moral authorship as ongoing effort, similar to Kant's concept of infinite effort. For James, with ongoing effort, the moral life and a personal value system is treated as something persistent, not as an arrival at a place. For James, values have to work in the real world under real friction, not just as principles, but as repeated lived attempts to coordinate behavior with commitments. So that means failure isn't a sign that your system is broken. It's a feature of a moral life as James understood it. You're not choosing your personal values system once. It's impossible to choose it once. You're re-choosing it continually. Under pressure, you're choosing your personal value system. Under fatigue, you're choosing your personal value system. Under ambiguity, the feature doesn't the this feature of ongoing effort and infinite effort in your personal value system, it doesn't negate the system. It tests and your failures don't negate the system. Your failures, they test whether the system helps you to return to the system or not. And this is not some poetic point. It's a practical one. If your system of values only works when you are well resourced, you've built a motivational tool, not a structural or ethical one. So finally, want to move on to Cora Diamond. Cora Diamond, in her work, The Difficulty of Reality, she introduces another layer. So we've got Immanuel Kant introducing this distinction between fallibility, which it upholds the legitimacy of the moral value when you fail, and corruption, which redefines moral values around our failures, right? Then we've got James, that emphasizes the ongoing work of morality and the function of a value system to help us return to that system when we fail. And then finally, Cora Diamond introduces this new layer, which is that not all failure of a personal value system is in fact internal. Some values fail because reality genuinely doesn't cooperate. So you plan to enforce this boundary that you have, but the cost of enforcing that boundary is actually losing your job. You want to tell the truth. You want to be direct because that's a personal value, but the fallout would actually destabilize your family. You want to protect your focus because you're valuing focus, but your caregiving responsibilities maybe don't allow it. So Diamond's contribution is this: not every contradiction in your actions is a moral lapse. Sometimes it's a mismatch between the values you hold and your context. And pretending otherwise, oh, if I had just tried harder, I could have lived it. That only produces a delusion and a kind of a pseudo lack of confidence in your system. So this doesn't let you off the hook for everything, but it sharpens your evaluation. Was this failure really due to an incoherence in my system or a hypocrisy in my actions, or does this did this have more to do with external reality just not cooperating? And if you aren't able to tell the difference between those two things, then you'll either abandon the values that actually work or rationalize behavior that doesn't. So, a better frame for evaluating value failure is something like this: that a usable personal value system includes within it a way to interpret misalignment, not as a failure of belief, not as invalidation of authorship, but as a decision point for reentry or revision. So this means asking, did I treat the value as intact even when I broke it? Did I try to maintain coherence by redefining the standard itself, which is Kant's concept of corruption? Did I consider whether the context made adherence structurally impossible? So you don't need to answer these questions perfectly, but you need to answer them consistently. So that's what makes the system usable, not obedience, but intelligibility under pressure. So to wrap things up, a personal value system is not designed to eliminate contradiction in your actions or even in your mind. Personal value system is designed to make those contradictions interpretable within a framework. The test of the system is not whether you always live according to it. The test is whether you know when you haven't, and whether the values remain coherent enough to be restored without reinvention. That's the shift from expecting your values to guarantee behavior to expecting them to make sense when behavior fails. You're not building a mirror, you're building a frame of reference. And that frame only matters if you can keep using it, even when you break it.